Cashew nuts. We eat millions of these nuts on a yearly basis, but very little thought goes into the production and processing for them to get to our table. Hi, I'm Richard Watts, founder of HR Maritime, and welcome back to Commodity Brief. In this episode, we're going to continue the series where we're looking at different commodities, and we're going to be focusing on cashew nuts. Cashew nuts are quite an interesting commodity because the volumes are quite small compared to a lot of different commodities, and the particular countries that we're talking about are quite limited. So when we're looking at cashew nuts, basically this is the cashew tree, and the fruit is made up of two parts. You have the top, which is the apple, and then you have the nut itself. So cashew nuts originated in Brazil. They were brought over to India and East Africa in about the 16th century. And then, as we can see from this image here, the trade is made up of two parts. Basically, the first part is how we actually produce, harvest, and sell them. And so this is the first stage, and then we have the processing. So the first stage, main areas of production are here in West and East Africa. And we then have the production predominantly in Vietnam and also in India. And so this is the processing that's done in Vietnam and India. So when we're actually looking at cashew nuts, in terms of the harvest, these are the countries that have the biggest areas for the harvest. And so as you can see, Ivory Coast is up there at the top, and then we have India, Tanzania, and so we're looking at a very, very few number of countries. However, when we're actually looking at the production quantity, then Vietnam comes at the top and India. And when we move on to having a look at the consumption, India consumes the largest quantities, followed by United States, which consumes about a half of these quantities. So it's very interesting because the cycle is quite unusual. So in terms of trading, there is one very, very large trading company that dominates the market, Olam International, and so they are very, very present in Africa, in West Africa in particular, and they handle a lot of different commodities but are very big into cashew nuts. It's also one of those trades where there are a lot of very small trading companies involved, because when you buy it, you essentially have to buy it inland in West Africa. You have to often offer some kind of prepayment, and so you need to have a good presence locally. Otherwise, in terms of the commodity itself, about 70% of it is consumed as nuts, as a snack, and then 30% of it goes into condiments and consumed otherwise. There is also the apple that I talked about earlier, the cashew apple, and that is used for other uses. And you can also create an oil out of the cashew nuts and also another oil out of the kernels, out of the shells themselves. So it's quite a diverse product and has quite a few different uses. In terms of transportation, basically we're talking about the two different aspects of the trade. So first of all, you have from the production, from the harvest to the processing, and that will be done in containers, normally in bags. And so there we need to be very careful about the moisture, because if the moisture is too high, then we can end up with mold, but we end up with too low and we can end up with cracking. So we need to be very, very, very careful. And then once they have been processed, they are normally vacuum sealed in bags, either plastic bags or in tins, in order to be transported, because then they have quite a short stale life. If they are exposed to air, then they can end up going stale. Now, in terms of the risks, we're really looking at moisture, so mold. We also have infestation, and we also have some self-heating. So this can be self-combustion. And so we need to be careful with the commodity. And it's one of those commodities that has a very, very high value. We're talking up to $2,000 per ton for the goods that have been produced before they've even been processed. So we have to be very, very careful, and any goods which are lost during this transportation or during the processing will obviously have quite a large financial impact. So that brings us to the end of this episode looking at cashew nuts. We hope that you'll join us for future episodes looking at different commodities. Thank you very much.